Welcome back to your Pig Trail Show for another edition of the Hog Hoops Report with Kevin McPherson. Kevin, what an exciting week of Hogs basketball. Troy, we had San Jose, two great wins there. What'd you see there on that end?
Well, first of all, there's always news coming out of Eric Musselman's program that's not always just about the game. And on the game, Troy, you mentioned that it seems like so long it was Monday. You've got Nick Smith Jr. making his debut on the same day that Devo Davis is going to be out for an indefinite leave of absence. They didn't use that wording, but he was going to spend some time away from basketball. So Arkansas, when it looked like they were getting back to full strength, they really weren't. So they were adding a piece, missing a piece. And then Nick Smith plays 6 minutes. He didn't start, comes off the bench early first half, gets 6 minutes in, had a rebound, missed a couple of shots. And so you're basically playing, you're even more shorthanded in a sense at that point. Troy did a good job of matching up with Arkansas using his own defense, stayed in that game, held leads of a 7-point lead in the first half, led by 3 with about 7 minutes left in the game after a 12-2 run. Kind of looked like Arkansas might be in some trouble. And then one Ricky Council IV stepped up and took the game over. This was a game of one-on-one basketball. Arkansas hits a 17-0 spurt, wins that game by 13. Council with 27 points, season high. Also the SEC's leading scorer after that game at over 20 points per game. But you saw Arkansas continue to be a second-half team or late second-half team. It's a trend that's now going to carry over to San Jose State. So what I thought was interesting about that game was you had one player coming back, one player out. 2 days later, we learned Devo's coming back. He puts a statement out that he's going to be back, excited to be back with the team. That's great news for Arkansas. This guy's been a big part of all the success that Musselman's had coaching this program. So he's back in the lineup. Now he's transitioning from being a starter, which he was the first 6 games, playing off the bench. Nick Smith Jr. gets his first career start. By the way, the 3 5-stars begin the game on the floor together. When you're talking Anthony Black, Jordan Walsh, of course, Mekhi Mitchell at the 5. We know Trevor Brazil's playing off the bench, and you've got, you've just got Ricky Council the 4th continuing in his starting role. So, you've got now, when you start looking at these pieces, you're daydreaming, if you're a Razorback fan, about all the possibilities. And you saw those possibilities play out in one game. Nick Smith Jr. hits his first shot as a Razorback. It's a 3. Arkansas goes up 5-2. But you look at another zone defense that really slowed Arkansas, I thought, even though they scored 40 first half points, there were stretches where, things didn't come real easy. But Nick Smith Jr. either scored or assisted in 15 consecutive points for the Hogs in a back and forth game. Then Arkansas had just a little mini spurt at the end of the half just to lead by 5. And it was still fairly close the first couple of minutes of that second half. And then Smith has his third 3 that gives Arkansas its first double-digit lead. They go up 11 on the strength of that 3. He had just drove in for a layup, got possession or 2 before that. So he's already put his stamp on this game. To that point, with 16 points and 5 assists, he comes out 5 minutes into that second half on a minutes restriction. He ends up playing 24, but Arkansas has already got a runaway train. I mean, they went from that 11-point lead at that point to winning by 41, and you saw everybody. Trevor Brazil, 23 points, getting so many drives to the basket, finishing off passes from Devo and Nick and getting and ones. You like to see that from him because he doesn't always deal great with contact, and I thought he really did in this game. And then he adds some other stats, 5 rebounds, a couple of assists and steals. And then I look at a guy like Ricky Council who continues to get to the basket. He's going to knock down a 3 or 2. He's going to hit some mid-range shots. But to me, it's his work making those tough drives. He doesn't always finish with a spectacular dunk. Sometimes he's hanging, banging, double clutching, going off the glass. He's a tough shot maker. This guy, to me, when you start looking at everything, he's been a guy that when Nick was out, we really saw him step up along with Anthony Black. Now, Anthony Black is averaging double figures around 14. Yesterday, 8 points. But look what he does, 6 assists to lead the team. He's going to get rebounds, four off the glass. He does so many unique things defensively. So when I started looking at this game, and Mekhi Mitchell having a big first half, he's been good in first halves. And then Jalen Graham getting his opportunity in the back stretch of this game. I think 11 or 12 minutes he played, but he's so efficient per minute when you look at not only his efficiency shooting, but the scoring numbers, 11 points, 6 rebounds, took a couple of charges. So when we've talked for so long about all this collective athleticism, talent, length, size, we have not seen it all together until this San Jose State game. I just went through the reasons why. We know Troy, what happened there. I just said it. Now we saw it all together. We saw it click in the second half. And I'm going to compare, Will, this Arkansas team. Let's use a boxing analogy. Arkansas, I keep looking back at these games and it's close. It's trading punches in the first half. And then Arkansas finds ways, whether it's midway through the second half, early second half, late second half, to run away from teams. And I'm going to make a boxing comparison. These weren't necessarily my favorite boxers, but guys like, when I look at a Bernard Hopkins, Bernard Hopkins, who was a great fighter. These are guys that didn't necessarily start fights great. They'd carry you for 6 rounds. A lot of rounds where you're wondering, is this the night they're going to get beat? And then they are counter punchers. They just start timing you up, figuring out what you're not doing right. And so not only do they make you miss, but then they're tagging you after you miss them. So they're scoring and you're not scoring. And that's really what Arkansas does. They start taking away things as the game goes on defensively. And then on offense, they start solving things as well. So it's a 1-2. It's a lot of counter punching and it starts to snowball. I use that word too. And I think, the boxing analogy may seem a little strained, but that's what it kind of reminds me of, because you're watching it going, what's so great about this guy? And the next thing you know, those championship rounds, they're dominating. And I think that's what Arkansas has done. And it's not just this season. I asked Musselman about it in the press conference last night. He talked about the fact, that in the last couple of years, and these are back-to-back Elite Eight teams, final national top 10 ranked teams, a lot of that was done late in games. A lot of that was getting over that mountaintop, finally getting over late. And that's what that's what it's been. It's a formula that works. You'd like to blow everybody out, and it starts that way, start to finish. But that's not been what it's at Arkansas, and that's just fine as long as you keep winning. By the way, Musselman picks up his 80th win. Arkansas wins by 41, 99-58. Didn't throw the score in there, but that was his 80th win at Arkansas, 80-29. When we talked about a Nick Smith being out for the first 6 games, when we talk in the past about guys like Isaiah Joe, who's now in the NBA, missing multiple games due to injury, Justin Smith, you just wonder how good that record might be had Arkansas been at full health. Injuries are part of the game. Other teams have them. But Arkansas has been pretty darn good in surviving and getting through bad stretches where some of their top players have been out. But it's fascinating because we're still early, just now getting into December. Arkansas's got Greensboro at home coming up Tuesday. Then they play that rematch against Oklahoma in Tulsa on Saturday, neutral site game against the Sooners, who hung a 22-point beatdown, I'll call it, to Arkansas last year. So there's going to be revenge on the mind of Eric Musselman. But also with 11 newcomers, only Devo Davis and Kamani Johnson were here for that. But you can bet those leaders in that locker room are going to get those players fired up for that one. Got to take care of business at home against Greensboro. But right now, I like where Arkansas is tracking, because I wrote this past week about what I see is developing into an elite backcourt, especially with Nick Smith back. And then each one of those players last night showed us why that's probably going to be true even sooner rather than later. I think we're going to see some spectacular nights by those guards, and anything they get from the front line. If Trevin Brazile gets consistent game in and game out and does what we know he's capable of, with support from some of those other names I mentioned, this, again, I say it a million times, this has the makings of a Final Four team, Will.
It really does, Kevin. And it's exciting to see how deep this team is. I think there's a real conversation there. But as always, you got to look to the future. And I've heard that you've been looking at some recruits now in Central Arkansas.
Yeah, Arkansas has been recruiting several players in the state. We see the results of that in recruiting by guys that they've signed year in and year out. But right now, when you look at 2 of the top players in the country, you've got a 5-star in 2024, Annor Boateng, a 6'6" wing at Little Rock Central. Spring and summer with the Arkansas Hogs grassroots on the Adidas 3SSB circuit. But here's a player that rose over the spring and summer, playing on that circuit up to top 13 nationally, according to Rivals, a 5-star. Got to see him play Thursday night in a big central, we call it the 501 here in Little Rock for the area code, but Little Rock Mills and Little Rock Central. And Mills, it was a home game for Mills, led double digits throughout. Boateng offensively really came on in the second half, had a big 3-point play and 1 play to tie the game with under a minute. And his team ends up winning by 4 after trailing most of the game. But Boateng finishes with 20 points, 8 rebounds, really stuffed the stat sheet. But here's a guy that's an impact player, chiseled at 6'6", a plus athlete. I'll call him an elite athlete, good length, but his ability to take over games and be a physical presence as well, because, even though he's a wing and translates as a perimeter guy at the next level, in the high school level, sometimes he's got to mix up play inside. He's capable of doing that and going to work. So, I thought Boateng really showed well. Again, a 20-point night and a comeback win. And then the next night, I got to go down to Benton and see another top 20 player in the 2025 class, though, Terrion Burgess, a 6'9" wing. 6'9" wing. This guy's a ball handler, shooter. He's got skill, and he's still growing. These are both players, by the way, that have recently taken unofficial visits when you go back to the summer to Arkansas. But Burgess has been to one of Arkansas's first 3 games. I'm trying to remember which one it was. I think it was the second game against Fordham to attend that game. Here's a young man that's already had a 40-plus point game this season, a couple of 30-plus. The night I saw him, they played a really good Farmington team, and he had 15 points in the second half, finished with 17, but he can knock down threes. He's got little floaters, driving to the basket. He's an above the rim finisher. He erased a shot off the backboard in transition, fights for the rebound, and now he's pushing the other end because he's got all those guard skills. So Terrion Burgess, top 20 player. Both of these guys, in my mind, should be priority recruits for Arkansas. And the way that Arkansas has been recruiting them, showing up, coming in to watch them practice. They'll attend games, have seen them in the spring and summer multiple times. They're priorities for the Razorback staff. So this is an interesting time. We always want to talk when we're in season about the Razorbacks, but recruiting never sleeps, Will. It's constant. And so when you put eyes on these players and watch their development, you start to understand why high major schools. I mean, Boateng, after what, I saw him 2 nights ago, he had an unofficial visit at Missouri this weekend. I put that announcement out yesterday that he was going to take that unofficial visit. Mizzou fans are all over my Twitter. It's like over 200 responses or likes or whatever. So how serious recruiting is, even in season. And so I think Arkansas will continue to make these guys a priority, get them on campus when they can, and go see them when they can.
Recruiting really does never sleep, Kevin. And I said it before, it's exciting watching the Razorbacks at Bud Walton, but it's also exciting watching those Pro-Hogs in the NBA. Who's been standing out to you on that end?
Pro-Hogs, well, it's still Bobby Portis at the top of that. When I start thinking about the fact this guy's playing off the bench at reserve and he's averaging a double-double, there's less than 10 players that are putting together the kind of stats he is, and most of those guys are heavier minute starter guys, more guys that factor in to, plays being called for them, really, top 3 players on their team, top 2 or 3. And Portis is a guy that's coming off the bench and kind of outside the big 3 on his team. So it's huge production. He's efficient and he has impact on winning. Last night the Bucks were shorthanded playing back-to-back games. Their top 3 players and producers sat this one out. Bobby gets into the starting lineup, 20 points, 8 rebounds, 7 assists. That was a career high for him. All of those were team highs. They go on the road and win a game. And so, this is a guy to me that continues. In my opinion, he should have been really heavily considered for the 6th man of the year 2 years ago when Milwaukee won its title. He wasn't even among the finalists. Right now, I don't see any contenders in the same space as him. There's other good 6 men. But to me right now, if the season ended, and we're a quarter way through, we're 20-plus games. If it ended now, to me, this would be a no-brainer. Maybe I'm a little biased, but the numbers back it up. The eye test backs it up. And of course, Milwaukee is one of the top teams in the NBA. And a lot of times your awards go to teams for players on teams that are doing well. So to me, right now he would be the front runner for that. Moses Moody, the 2nd-year guard, the Arkansas's first one and done, has been in the rotation earlier in the year. He's kind of been out of it for a few games. Last night against Houston, it was a home win for Golden State. He got 17 minutes. And made the most of that. 4 or 5 from the field, 3 of 3 from 3. So another double-figure scoring game for him. He had 11 points, and that's his 5th double-figure scoring game of the season. And one more note: Daniel Gafford with Washington Wizards, kind of an up-and-down team. This is a team that can potentially make the playoffs down the road. They'll be in the hunt for that. But Gafford had his 2nd double-double of the season earlier in the week. 10 points and 12 rebounds, but he also had 6 block shots. Now, he only played 24 minutes. He's been averaging about 11, 12 minutes a game. So they doubled his time, and you see the production value if you let him play. And this guy's going to impact the game in a positive way. I think his box score plus-minus was plus 16 in that one.
Kevin, it's been so exciting watching all of these guys. Bobby specifically, I think all of Arkansas is pulling for him there in that 6-man spot. Kevin, that's all the time we've got. We've got to go to break. So much more Pig Trail Show coming up.